So I would ask everybody to sit down so that we can start. And I would really heartfully welcome you on behalf of the Southeast Europe Association to our today Laudation event for the Solidarity Prize for Journalists from Southeast Europe. And of course, first I would start with welcoming our VIPs, and of course the biggest VIP tonight is this year's laureate Ivana Gordić Perc, journalist at the Voice Vojvodina Research and Analytical Center from Zrenjanin. We will hear later much more about you because you're at the center of tonight. Great to have you here in Berlin. And of course, what is the laureate without the one who will hold the laudation? Thomas Hacker, our colleague in the presidency of the Southeast Europe Association, but also member of German Parliament from the Liberal fraction. That's showing that we are inter-party tonight, and you took over the lovely task to make the laudation tonight. Great to have you here as well.
Thank you.
But of course, we are not here alone. We have also Josip Juratovic, who is also one of the vice presidents of the Southeast Europe Association, member of parliament from the Social Democrats. And also we are especially thankful to Josip because this room has not been built by him, but that we can join in here tonight is thankful to him and to the Social Democratic fraction who is spending us this nice house for tonight's event. Thank you, Josip, and great to have you here as well as your colleague from the Social Democrats, Adis Ahmetovic, who is a member of the Southeast Europe Association. Perhaps he will become more earlier or later. Great that you are here as well. And we have Krsto Lazarević with us, sitting on my right-hand side. Christian told me that you should sit somewhere. I think it was somewhere else, but I think it's okay, yeah, Christian? Because, yeah, this is the way with instructing the president. It's always failing somehow. You have been a laureate of Southeast Europe Journalist Prize for like the transmission German journalists of it was this year. And after we liked so much the presentation or the answer on the laudation actually you gave with your colleague from Ballaballa-Balkan, we decided to have you here tonight not for the fun part only, also for content. Great to have you here. We also have representatives of the four big political foundations in Germany here: Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Heinrich Böll Stiftung, and Friedrich Naumann Stiftung. And I think this is showing that the Southeast Europe Association is cross-party lines, but also that the foundations are across party lines an important part of German foreign policy in the region. Yes, and last but not least, welcome to everybody here in the room, ladies and gentlemen, and to everybody who is on the live stream tonight. The Southeast Europe Association awards this prize for the second time this year. Last year we had the first time the possibility after the Corona lockdown to do an initial ceremony. The idea of this prize was that we witness a sincere backdrop of the media situation in the region. Media watchdog organizations have been pointed over years to a decline in media freedom in almost all countries of Southeast Europe, even despite some of the countries are in EU membership or candidacy. Nevertheless, in all of these countries, we see brave journalists who stand against this type of politicization of media reporting, disinformation, and the lack of objective reporting. Quite often, these people take great personal risk when working on investigative pieces or speak out against nationalist or corrupt politicians whose statements otherwise would not receive any critique. The prize thus serves mainly two purposes. First, to underline that we are at the side of these brave people, to try to show that we want threats against them not to go unnoticed. Here at the Bundestag, we are in the heart of the German democracy, and we want to put from here a spotlight on the media freedom in Southeast Europe and show that the intention in Germany, in the heart of German's democracy, on your work in the region and on the situation in the region is there and will stay. Second purpose is, of course, to underline how important the work of journalists in the region is by offering also an endowment that comes with the prize. It's not much money, but It is money which has been solely financed by donations from Southeast Europe Association members and supporters. So it's a great sign that the work of civil society, the work of journalism in the region has not only political support, but also people who are willing to open their wallets to show the solidarity. And of course, I want to thank all these people, especially to share European values, not only in heart and mind, but also with the wallet. Is very welcome for us. I already said that we thank the Social Democrats for hosting us tonight. And of course, especially the team of the Southeast Europe Association for organizing the event. You know that we are a cross-party organization. This is something which is perhaps not the only one, but one of the hard keys of Southeast Europe Association, that we are sitting with different party affiliations together here and having a common aim and putting the spotlight on today's laureate. Yes, and I'm really happy that tonight we have with Ivana, a great laureate, who shed in her work light on an issue in the intersection of so many topics of the Southeast Europe Association over the past years: poor labor conditions in the region, the influence of autocratic external actors, environmental problems, and authoritarian governments are only some of them. So I'm really happy that we are here tonight to have this event with you. And when I see the plan right, then my main job will be in the end to close it. And until then, I'm going to listen to you, and I'm delighted that you are here. Thank you. And now for a second brief introduction, I would hand over to Josip Juratovic.
Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender. Sehr geehrte Frau Ivana Gordić Perc, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Ich darf Sie heute herzlich zur Preisverleihung des Solidaritätspreises der Südosteuropa-Gesellschaft für Journalisten und Journalistinnen begrüßen. Es freut mich, dass wir nach so langer Corona-Zeit wieder physisch zusammenkommen können. An dieser Stelle möchte ich mich auch bei meiner Fraktion bedanken, die bei der Organisation der heutigen Veranstaltung ihren großen Anteil trägt. Ja, meine Damen und Herren, Meinungsfreiheit und Pressefreiheit sind vor allem in der heutigen Zeit ein so wichtiges und wesentliches Element der Demokratie. Aber sie sind selbstverständlich, sie sind nicht selbstverständlich, sondern tagtäglich auch hart umkämpft. Daher ist es umso mutiger und bewundernswerter von Menschen wie Ihnen, Frau Ivana Gordić Perc, gegen Bedrohungen von außen standhaft zu bleiben und sich bei der Sache nach der Wahrheit nicht einschüchtern zu lassen. Sie setzen unerschrocken ihre journalistische Arbeit fort, trotz der vielen Drohungen, der Sie und Ihre Familie ausgesetzt sind. Dafür haben Sie unser aller Respekt und Hochachtung verdient. Sie erhalten zu Recht den diesjährigen Solidaritätspreis der Südosteuropa-Gesellschaft. Mein Glückwunsch. Und nun, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, ich wünsche Ihnen und uns allen einen guten Abend und eine spannende Diskussion. Und vielen Dank für Ihr Kommen.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the assistance.
I'm always at your service.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, honorable members of Parliament, it's a great honor for me to be here as one of the new vice presidents of the Southeast Europe Association, just a few months after my elections, and to speak about political issues close to my heart: freedom of press and freedom of expression. It's not a secret that as a member of the German Bundestag, as media policy spokesman for my parliamentary group, and as a member of the committees on culture and media and on European affairs, a particular focus of my work lies on two topics: media and the countries of the Western Balkans. Democracy is not possible without freedom of press, neither here in Germany nor in the countries of Southeastern Europe. Whether it's chants of mendacious press disinformation campaigns, attacks on media representatives or state censorship. Freedom of press has never been as endangered worldwide as it is in these days. Today, the war of narratives has an incredible aggressiveness and a momentum that knows neither decency nor boundaries. Critical journalism has become life-threatening for journalists in many countries around the world. Reporters Without Borders' annual assessment of the development of press freedom is more a disillusion than an optimistic outlook. We are in a serious situation, but there are bright spots as well. Courageous journalists prove consistently that freedom of press is never negotiable. They investigate with passion, sometimes at their own peril, without backing of an editorial team, and with full conscience see conflicts with criminals, fraudsters, authoritarian regimes, the corrupt and hypocrites. Thus, they act as an indispensable corrective. Yes, freedom of press in the countries of Southeastern Europe has to assert and reassure itself again and again. This becomes obvious not only by the ranking of Reporters Without Borders, whether through diffuse restrictions or intensified existential hardship due to the withdrawal of state aid or state advertisements. Unfortunately, critical journalists are increasingly regarded as enemies in many states. Politics and society both must have no doubts. The greater the threat to free and independent reporting is, the more resolutely we must defend it against internal and external enemies. We must be aware. The end of press freedom is the beginning of the end of all our freedom. The countries of the European Union must stand up, must stand strong and close for our values and defend them resolutely. It is our duty to do so. Free and strong media is a central condition for an EU perspective. But this applies as well to existing memberships in the European Union. As the Southeast Europe Association, we want to build bridges. This principle applies to our Solidarity Award for courageous journalists from our partner countries. We don't just want to honor courageous critical journalism by itself. We want to render broad assistance. We want to encourage. We want to strengthen. We want to put it in the focus and protection of European attention. We want to say to all those courageous journalists, we stand by your side in the fight for our common European values. Following Dragan Bursac from Bosnia-Herzegovina and Una Hajdari from Kosovo in 2022, the Southeast Europe Association is once again honoring an exceptionally strong voice for democracy and press freedom. With her journalistic work, Ivana Gordić Perc stands for a special courage, not to be intimidated even by the greatest threats. With her work, the prestigious journalist from Zrenjanin gives a clear answer to the frequently asked question, why is journalism still so important? Her hometown of Zrenjanin, just about 80 kilometers away from the capital, Belgrade, is one of Serbia's 11 free trade zones. In addition to the favorable economic conditions, foreign investors appreciate the central location of the city with more than 76,000 inhabitants. This is also the case with the Chinese tire manufacturer Ling Long, which began the construction of its first European factory in March 2019. According to its own description at that time, this was the largest foreign investment project in Serbia, which is considered China's first strategic partner in Central and Eastern Europe. With more than 20 years of professional experience and well connected in Zrenjanin, the journalist from Voice, the Vojvodina Research and Analytics Center, soon begins to look behind the scenes of this alleged success story. She finally reveals the reality on the construction site with many hard labor, harsh conditions and miserable wages for Vietnamese workers. She reports how 500 people have to walk through faces-clogged toilets with plastic battle shoes, are housed in unheated barracks while their passports are taken away for the slightest criticism. A documentation of slave labor in the 21st century in the middle of Europe. But in the country led by President Alexander Vučić, they don't want to hear about it. All the more as the major investment of around $900 million, it's a vanity project for the president. Gordić Perc describes what Serbia's head of government, Ana Brnabić, will later defame as a political attack on the country's cooperation with China. But a journalistic scoop is always hard to stop, even more when it leaves no doubt about the facts. Her story not only generated great media attention in Serbia, it eventually led to a resolution in the European Parliament and a debate at the United Nations. But beyond the journalistic success, a difficult time followed for the mother of 3 children, especially in a city waiting for the big economic success. A team of Deutsche Welle meets the same people who show no sympathy for critical journalism as well. And this is precisely why we want to highlight this work with our award. It's a great pleasure for me that this year's SOG Solidarity Award for journalists from Southeast Europe goes to Ivana Gordić Perc for her strong and courageous reporting performance. With her courage, her journalistic perseverance, and her advocacy for press freedom, she is an inspiring role model for all of us. Her journalistic work is proof why independent journalism will always have its justification and is so indispensable as a means of checks and balances. On behalf of the Southeast Europe Society, I congratulate from the bottom of my heart. And of course, a good story always has a sequel. Even though the approximately 500 Vietnamese workers have now been relocated to other accommodations and working conditions were improved, they are still waiting for the wages. Currently, 50 Vietnamese workers at the Ling Long construction site have gone on strike. I'm sure Ivana Gordić Perc will follow the further developments. We are very curious. So, Mrs. Gordić Perc, thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you.
We have a certificate as well, Solidarity Award 2022 for journalists from Southeast Europe. We proudly award Ivana Gordić Perc for her outstanding work and her contribution to more democracy, rule of law, and press freedom in the region. Manuel Sarrazin.
That's not you, that's me.
So.
So, Ivana, I think you have to answer.
Yes, I think that you should sign.
You should write under his sign, yeah. You know your name?
I have the secret script, you know.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich möchte mich zunächst herzlich für diese Auszeichnung bedanken. Sie kam als Überraschung, ist aber auch eine große Unterstützung für meine weitere Arbeit. Wir leben in einer Zeit, in der Journalisten und Journalistinnen Europa als Kriegsberichterstatter und Kriegsberichterstatterinnen bedroht sind wie schon lange nicht mehr. Unser gemeinsames Ziel sollte sein, dies zu ändern. So far, this is, what can I say, auf Deutsch, and I suppose it would be better if I continue in English. My favorite quote regarding journalism is one said by George Orwell. Journalism is printing what someone else does not want published. Everything else is public relations. That's true. The events and news that followed the story about Vietnamese workers working in a labor camp within the Chinese construction site Ling Long in my hometown Zrenjanin shown that Orwell was absolutely right. Unfortunately, but that's true. This, as well as the other investments, should have been made into PR without any other questions asked by the public. I do not believe that anyone in Zrenjanin knew what was happening at the end of the industrial zone, just a few kilometers away from the city center, where hundreds of people work every day. But nobody wanted to publish. We did. We dared. The experience I gained working on the story is completely different from any other. We can classify this as a misunderstanding of the cultural code and the context from which these people come. Even though I insisted on doing human stories before, and somehow I managed to cope with the pressure they carry. But when you see, hear, and feel everything that happens in the camp, the biggest challenge was but still is, how to ignore emotions and remain objective. This is reward for bravery. I don't know if I am brave. On those cold, rainy nights, when my really brave friend and I went to see those wet, hungry, and barefoot people, I had only one question in my head. 5 of us or 500 of them? I knew the story is big and could bring a lot of trouble to my family, which it did. But even at the first glance, it was crystal clear that what was happening, and I had no dilemma. The dilemma was just how to set up a story that would attract public attention and not harm the workers. There was no reaction. The public wake up after my colleagues from N1 television picked up a story and reported on terrible living and working conditions of Vietnamese workers. Institutions did not. Unfortunately, we still do not have answers to many questions that waited to be answered in the past months. All of them will eventually return home without their experience being recorded in the official protocols of Serbia. In the end, it will be as if nothing happened. Today in Serbia, we have completely collapsed and devastated institutions. Ling Long and the corruption involved is just one example. But neither we journalists nor activists can fight this kind of injustice alone. We need help, your help. In that sense, I see today's award as a shield. It wasn't easy and pleasant to be photographed, followed, intimidated, and chased like a wild animal. I count that as a being part of my job description. And I am not afraid. It wasn't the first time. I knew how it looks like. I was really scared at the moment when my child's safety was at stake. That was when I really wanted to step aside. The only support I had was from my family and my colleagues. In a small environment like Zrenjanin, when the cameras switch off and the journalists leave, you are left completely alone, with no protection. And you resent dangerous people and threaten their huge amount of money. That is why our encounter today gives me hope. I know that there are people who know what is really happening and who support my work, both me and my colleagues journalists. Unfortunately, we have no one in our country who would support us in our fight for freedom of speech as a prerequisite for a democratic society. Therefore, if you really want that Serbia becomes a better place to live and one day part of EU, you will have to do your part of the job in the best way you can. In this short time, I have met and communicated with you, and I know you can do it. Thank you again.
Yeah, so we wanted to make this not only a ceremony, but as we are talking about critical journalism, we also wanted to open room for discussion. And I now have the job to announce that we are going to have a discussion round with the laureate, and the questions and the moderation I will put into the hands of Krsto.
Mm-hmm.
You know the timing, or should we ask Christian? I think we have time until 7:45, so it should be enough.
Oh yeah,
if you make it good.
75 minutes. Wow. Okay.
1 hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. 75. Yeah. It doesn't look so.
We will see how long it takes. Ms. Gordić Perc, you are receiving the prize for your research on hundreds of Vietnamese workers who were exploited in the city of Zrenjanin, a town with round about 75,000 inhabitants. It's not a small town. And when you wrote that they were living on the industrial complex, that they were not allowed to be in contact in any way with the local population. And I wanted to ask you, how is that possible, and how were the working conditions of the Vietnamese workers in Zrenjanin at the factory?
That was one of the questions I asked myself when I started that story. But let's start directly. It was possible because someone allowed that. It is not possible to treat people like that. Vietnamese workers, Chinese workers, Serbian workers, journalists, activists, in the way that is not human. You are a foreign citizen in Zrenjanin, and you do whatever you want. It means that it is allowed. But let's start from the beginning. Ling Long is a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. We know that there are 131 projects in Balkan, of which 61 project is implemented in Serbia. And the estimated value of the whole project in Serbia is about 19 billion euros. It's too much, and I think that no one wants to lose its position and those investments. Talking about Ling Long International Europe, I have to say, if maybe someone here doesn't know, that they got 95 acre of best arable land in Zrenjanin. Zrenjanin, as well as Banat region and Vojvodina, are agricultural areas. And I didn't believe that, so I checked with the specialists, and they said that is really the best part of the land we have. They've got 75.8 million from a Ministry of Economy as a grant, and they got about 7.6 million euros from Republic Property Directorate. They promised that we'll employ 1,050 workers, of which 1,200 Serbian citizens, and 300 will be posted by the company from the company's home country, China. So just from Ling Long example, we see that that is not true. We still do not know how many Chinese workers are there. In the documents we saw, there are mentioned two women. We don't know who they are, 2 women from Vietnam. And according to all international indicators, those workers are human trafficking victims. So that's some beginning of the story. gentleman already said a large part of the things that I was planning to say. So maybe we can talk about the structure of those people. They were cheated. They had to pay from $200 to $4,200 just to arrive to Zrenjanin. They were transferred by bus during the night in the middle of nowhere. We didn't know that they exist. For me, what the biggest surprise, the biggest surprise was when I saw that they sign all the documents by fingerprints. It means that they are illiterate. And they were so threatened that they didn't want to talk with us. In the beginning, they were run for me. And I needed months to understand why. And then when all my colleagues and I go through those chasing grounds with mobile phone, now I understand. They were scared. They will threaten that they will cut their hand if they organize themselves in syndicate. Can you imagine that? That there are rules from 13th century. I mean, that is really, really bad situation. And I couldn't, every day while I was discovering the story, I was surprised how deep that can go. And I am still surprising. We have several cases of death, and officially we have only one, and that is the death of one worker from Serbia. But we have some testimonials that workers for Vietnam died as well, at least 3. And we don't know what happened with their bodies. Do their family know their destiny? And I don't know. You mentioned that they will on strike. Yes, they will. Vietnamese now were on strike, but they came back to work these days. 8 of them was back home last week. Some of them will came back in next few months. So they will go home without any official record of what happened. And without that, officially nothing happened.
And can you tell us a little bit about the working and living conditions? How many hours do they work? How much money do they get? What was promised to them? What are they getting? How are there bathrooms? Do they have access to medical service?
No. In short sentence, answer to all your question is no. When the first time I was there, it was rainy night, and there was no sewage system, and all those spaces were on the ground, and they had some chickens in some cages, trying to prepare them to eat. They didn't have food. They didn't have drinking water. I don't know. Do you know? But we in Zrenjanin officially do not have drinking water. Town has about 80,000 people, as you mentioned, but with 22 villages, it is about 120,000 inhabitants, which also do not have water. So can you imagine how that looks like? That is what I was trying to say, but not to be pathetic, but realistic. When you see and feel, you have to go there and face with that situation, because a word is not enough, a video not is enough, picture is not enough. You just have to be there physically. They work every day. There is no rule. Rule is work as much as you can. And this last strike maybe can be some illustration of the things what was happening during past months. People wanted to work, of course, but their managers forced them not to work 5 days. And then they cut their salary for 70%. And they promised him average salary about 900 euros, but last payment was about 300 euros. There was a list of inventions how to cut the salary, and there is a list how to force people to work more. I mean, maybe it's not a good idea to go in details. If you want, we can talk about that. But for a wider picture, maybe just a few sentences.
When I listen to Mr. President Aleksandar Vučić, it sounds like everybody's investing in Serbia. Foreign investments are coming in. The Belt and Road Initiative is a big thing. There was a very huge poster of Xi Jinping 1 year ago in Belgrade in the city center saying, what was it saying? Friend or?
Ironing.
Thank you, brother. Yes.
Brother C, thank you, brother C, and čelično prijateljstvo.
Friendship.
Ironing friendship. It means a strong friendship between two countries and two presidents.
So Aleksandar Vučić is making this image of trying to be the guy in the middle, somewhere in between China and Russia and the European Union, and getting the best out of everything. And it sounds very nice. So every time I'm in Belgrade, I still wonder why it doesn't look like Switzerland. But to ask you seriously, how do you see that these programs are sold by the government and their media outlets as big success and investment from foreign investors? But when you look at it, who actually paid for this factory and who gave the subsidies to them? Can you tell us something about that? Is that really like the big foreign investments, or where's the money coming from?
Come on. First of all, Serbia is Switzerland only and breaking news on the national television, and in the breaking news in the evening. First of all, we do not talk about real investments. We are talking about credits. And I think that my grandchildren will pay for that. Ling Long and other Chinese investment. Just to be clear, in the beginning, I am not against the investment. I am for investment when we know what is going on, and investment is something which is related to the country and to the public. So it means that all of them has to be presented to the people and to the public. But in the case of Chinese investments, they are based of a bilateral contract between Serbia and China, and we do not know what is going on there. So it means that we have a huge credit, and we know that they are not cost-benefit proved, and we suspect that the country finance itself with that money, and citizens pay and will pay for that. Moreover, all those new investment and welfare for Serbia and the Serbian citizens are not best future we will ever have in 2, 3, 5 or 10 years. We are talking about old technologies. We are talking about extremely bad environmental impact. We are talking about devastated institutions in Serbia. We are talking about a system who is nearly collapsing.
So when you break this story down to its very core, this is basically about corruption, right?
Yes, story about the Ling Long is a story about corruption, because this is secret. Res publica means that all things has to be public. They are not public. If it's not public, it means that it's secret. If it's secret, it means that there is a excellent ground for the corruption, and it is going on here.
I mean, of course, the Vietnamese workers were exploited in a very, very bad way, and it was presented to the public differently than it really is in Serbia. We can say that, but you just said there are also environmental issues in Zrenjanin itself with this company, with a tire company. I mean, you can imagine that there's a reason they don't have this tire company next to Berlin. I mean, can you tell me something about the environmental issues now?
We still do not know how will we still do not know about environmental impact. Why? Because we do not have all the documentations we had to have, and so far our experience said that municipal or local, provincial and national government had not fulfilled its obligation and laws and procedures described by the laws. So activists dig in the documents which were available, and they suspect that impact will be extremely bad. I must say that Zrenjanin is close to Romanian border, it is close to Hungarian border, and the impact will be visible in the European Union as well.
You quoted George Orwell.
Yes.
On journalism as something that somebody doesn't want to get published, everything else is public relations. Who then wanted you to publish that story? And, well, what happened after you published it?
I mean, it is obvious who didn't want. But I decided to publish because I couldn't stand what I saw. And some people told me that I am too emotional. I think that I am not too emotional. I think that every human being, especially journalist, is obliged to talk about that. It is mandatory thing. For me, there is no doubt, as I said. What happened? You know, there are those usual things, you know, first they try to send you a message via social networks, then some friend said, okay, it's not so good that you do that, move to shift to another subject. But for me was surprising, the biggest surprise actually was how Chinese managers behave to the press. Really. And one of my colleagues asked me why do I think that, and why I am strictly against that behavior. And I said that Ling Long has the most comprehensive database of all journalists who ever reported about Ling Long in Zrenjanin. We all were pictured. They took a photo of us. They were followed us. They even take a photo of the plates of the cars. And they especially followed the people who use drone to make a wider picture. Because I believe that a reason for that is that when you say 50,000 square meters, we do not actually know how big it is. But people said that it is 200 football stadiums. And a half of them is the most problematical part, which is related with environment and the human health. I said that Zrenjanin has no drinking water. There is one study which said that arson, which is cause of death, is one of the reasons why we have cardiovascular diseases. We are first in the country because we have diabetes too, and approximately people from Zrenjanin has a live shorter life expectancy is 4 years. We live 4 years later. Yeah, it's statistically shown.
4 years below the Serbians then.
Nobody said that official for decades, but I was researching that, yes.
Wow.
And when you see the national reports on the National Health Institute, you will see how Serbia looks like. Banat is here, Zrenjanin is in the center. You know that they show those maps with the colors, and white is the best, and dark is the worst. So for years, Zrenjanin is worst. We have the larger number of people who has diabetes too. And above all of that, we will have Ling Long now.
You said they followed you, they threatened you. You talked about a drone they were using in order to...
Yeah, they were following journalists who uses drone in their reports.
Can you call the police and they will do something, or?
I haven't called police. Why? Because in most of the times, Chris knows, if I am on field, I do not have signal. You are in the middle of nowhere. Who to call? And in the beginning, I was with one friend, sitting in a car, waiting what will happen.
Can you tell us something, or let's say Serbia has a very interesting media landscape with state-affiliated media is the neutral term, I would say, and very, very legendary tabloids like Informa. Actually, from a comedian point of view, they're pretty funny. It's a little bit sad that people take it seriously. Like my favorite one was on the 24th of February. Every of those state-affiliated tabloids had the headline that Ukraine is attacking Russia. So just for you to get an idea on what parallel reality they are making up. You are, of course, not working for one of them, but you as a serious investigative journalist who's doing real journalist work, how does that media landscape affect you? Because, I mean, there's a reason those tabloids receive like more money from state-affiliated companies than Voice, for example, the outlet you are working for.
Yes, we are struggling to survive, and they live much better than we, with a secure future, which I cannot say for us. I was trying not to think about that because it is really stressful. But my concern is that tabloids and everything what is standing beside them did their job perfectly. Because now, even when I talk to the people who are literate and who are following media, they said, I don't know what to believe in. So tabloids and those few national television, they did their job. And their job was to make a mess, and they did it. And if you want Serbia become better place, we first of all have to see what to do with media and solve the problem with the media, because their impact is really significant.
I have one last question before I open for questions and debate, and that's also the most important question. What can we do to help you? I was talking about investigative journalism in Serbia. Yeah. What can we do to help you?
I give you my hand. give me yours and we will manage. I mean, we need support in any way. We are not safe, we are not paid, we do not have support to grow. If you can work, how do you expect that they will have independent growing media? How? If I am not safe to go outside or take a walk with my children, do you think that I will think on development of the media? Of course not. First thing I do when I go out, I said, okay, is it clear? Who is watching? Next, when I get the salary, I am planning what to do until next month. So development of the media for me is the 10th place, I think. So maybe that's the field where we can talk about.
Thank you very much. And I would say, if anybody has a question, that's the right time.
First of all, congratulations once more also from... my name is Gudrun Steinacker. I'm Vice President of the Southeast Europe Association, a former diplomat with some extensive experience in the Balkan region. And I also know Zrenjanin. I have a friend there. I was 2 weeks ago, I was in Serbia, but did not have enough time to visit her, so I did not come to Zrenjanin. I will do it certainly next time. Would you say that this is a particularly extreme case, the case of Longue, or do you suspect that there are similar cases in Serbia, and not to speak of the region? Because I know about other places where also a lot of Chinese, maybe even Vietnamese workers were used, like the motorway in Montenegro, which was mostly constructed by Chinese workers. Yes, do you think this is a particularly bad or very special case, or do you suspect that there are more cases like that?
No, this is the rule. And this case just got some media follow it, and that's it. If you just go through Serbia, you will see dozens of examples similar like that, especially in those big investments.
I wanted to ask a similar question, perhaps a bit more pointed. We are also having huge amounts of German foreign direct investments to Serbia. So my question was also directed to the question, is this happening particularly with Chinese investment? Because what we hear usually is that German investors are having good working conditions for the staff working at the factories, but the construction might be different points. So would you say that there's a difference between Chinese investment in Serbia and you guys from Germany are usually quite fair and good? Or would you also finger point at Germans to a certain extent?
Definitely, Serbian workers prefer German investments, but they also complain on some conditions. But if you ask, for example, Vietnamese workers why they come to Zrenjanin, they said that they were cheated and that they were promised that managers will be German.
Oh.
Yes. So, and the second thing is what we published today. We finally have one testimonial from one of the workers about human trafficking from Zrenjanin to Romania, and from Romania, you guess, to Berlin. Dream of Vietnamese worker is to be smuggled to EU and then to come here to Berlin. So maybe that is the answer to your question. And some of them, as far as I know, some of them are already here. You asked.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's not the answer only, but it's an answer.
Actually, we do have some We actually do have some human trafficking cases here in Hohenschönhausen in Berlin, but that's maybe we can talk about that later. Yes, please.
Well, I'm Walter Kaufmann from the Heinrich Böll Foundation. Thank you so much for your work and congratulations. I wonder what are the political and legal means at hand in the case. And if you take Ling Long as a proof case, and it has been said in the beginning that this was a success story because thanks to your work, your article, it has been brought to the European Parliament, even to the UN. What are the consequences you can see? And because we have Serbia being an EU candidate country, we are meeting at the German Bundestag. We have representative not of the Bundestag only, but also of the government. And so how can we imagine to influence the situation? Because one way to neutralize journalism is not just to suppress it, but to ignore it. If nothing changes, you publish hundreds of stories and nothing changes at all, then you are kind of neutralized.
Yes, last week I was discussed that topic with my colleague Ksenia Pavkov, who was first who made the video and interviews with those people for television, and we concluded that now it is really doesn't matter what we write or publish, because nothing will change. And for me, that is the worst I can imagine, really. And regarding that, we haven't talked about that. Regarding our experience, I followed some associations led by lawyers. They analyzed Ling Long by their side, and in case of Ling Long, they used so-called salami slicing. What does it mean? It means that one project, huge as a Ling Long, has not fulfilled all requirements. Thank you. So they invent that one project can be divided in several smaller projects. So, for instance, we have in Ling Long construction permit for the gate, and they, based on that gate, they build the whole factory with all questionable parts of the site without any documents. And if we are all asking questions, we still do not have them. But if you are interested, there are 2 case studies where is in detail described how our laws were avoided. So we can provide that to you.
Good evening, Ivana. My name is Jens Bastian. I'm a member of the board of the Southeast Europe Association, and I'm particularly happy about your presentation because I work on China in Southeastern Europe. Much of what you said is familiar to me, but it also highlights in a fascinating way what you have presented and the work you continue to do, that there are stories like yours that can and do make a difference. That's an achievement in its own right. I also think that what you have shown us, and in particular to a larger audience in Europe and worldwide, is to unmask the contradictions of what the Chinese always claim to be so-called win-win corporations. There's only one winner in this equation, not 2. That's what you highlight. It serves to be underlined. You mentioned the lack of transparency, which is a characteristic of almost any Chinese project in cooperation in Serbia or in other countries of the region. And it's an unequal fight. that you are fighting. You highlighted how many resources one side has and the lack of your resources. That's one of the reasons you're here. And as the moderator has asked you, where can we help to make this fight less unequal? My question is one concerning the Chinese themselves. Can you identify over the course now, since you broke this story more than 1.5 years ago, are they learning something from this? Can you identify possibly little steps where they are adjusting, adapting, or do they remain as hardcore, as closed as you've described it? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to talk with you later. It would be precious for me to find out what are you doing. In short sentence, my reply to you is no. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that it would be even worse. Because I think that they said for that Italian former president, how it's called, Berlusconi, that he's on power just because he cannot allow himself to go to the jail. So, I mean, the same reason we have here in Serbia, and it is obvious that our government work for their own well-being and for interest of investors, and not for the interest of the citizens. Thank you.
Maybe that connects well to what you just said. My name is Helene Kortländer. I work for the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung here in Berlin. And I wanted to ask, how deep does the Serbian involvement run in this? Mm-hmm. So it's a Chinese company. Are there any Serbian nationals on that complex? Is it just more like condoning and looking away, or does the involvement of Serbia run deeper there?
I think that Serbia is under the surface, but strongly supporting everything what company does. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Thanks. My name is Henry Hajirai. I'm also a member of the Südosteuropa-Gesellschaft. Firstly, congratulations on the prize. As someone who comes from the region, it makes me not only proud but also hopeful that we are journalists such as yourself. Secondly, I respect the fact that in your acceptance speech, you used half of that to not only to take the award, but also to raise awareness and what should we do. So I respect it, and I think that talks a lot about you as a person. So you have now, so my question goes in the direction of the gentleman. You have 2 members of the parliament. You have Manuel, who is the appointee of the government for Western Balkans. So what should be done in your point of view from Germany or from the European Union? Should there be maybe some measures to hire the social and environmental laws? So, for example, to make it obligatory, or to should the German government point the finger at the economical relationship, and if something do not change, that we will have something sanctions, or so? What should, in your point of view, specifically happen from Germany?
This is really a very complicated moment for the European Union as well. But my opinion is that you all gave a lot of room for our chess player to make a move. So we talked once about that. If Germany said that Germany is for so strict about Serbia joining to EU, and then we got the message for France that from France that they want to have some kind of political, European political union or community. It means that we have two opposite messages which will be used. Maybe we can make a small, we are in the end, you're great, but maybe we can make a small play just to explain what I think. So I'm from Serbia, I will be the bad guy, Serbia. So if I have one old table with sharp edges, which I have to move and to go straight there. Manuel will come to see me, and he would say, okay, let's do the job. Move that table there. Why? Because it is not safe, edges are sharp, you cannot go straight, it is not safe for your children. We will then got the message from France, and they will say, move the table there. It is in the same way, but move it on the left. It is not a problem with us. At that moment, you won't mind, our friend from Russia said, oh, my brother, yes, I understand. It is so emotional for you. It is your family inheritance. It is better to stay at the place you think. What do you think? Can we manage something about the gas so you can warm your children this winter? And our Chinese friend will come and say, okay, do you need any credits to build a house? So we have one really crazy situation, but as well, the position where we have a lot of room for maneuver. And result of that nothing will happen. Everything remain the same, and nothing will change. Table will stay in the center of the room. No one will move, and maybe some of my children will fell from the table. It will sitting in a cold room, and we will never had that house. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I mean, the European Union has to have one strict attitude. That's it. And that is the basis. After that, we can talk about environment, we can talk about economy, we can talk about investments, we can talk about pre-accession instruments, whatever you want, but with one strict rule. We will go there, full stop.
I would have another question, as I usually work in Brussels, and we had some Western Balkan things going on within the last weeks. Actually, there was not a lot going on. There is no visa liberalization for Kosovo. There is no candidate status for Bosnia. North Macedonia has a candidate status for 17 years now, but they're still not negotiating. And in Serbia, we just had an opinion poll saying that 51% of Serbs do not want to become member of the European Union, while it was only 34 who want to become member of the European Union. When I used to work as correspondent in Belgrade, it was always like 50-50. Sometimes a few people were more for or against, but now we really have the situation where the majority in Serbia think that Serbia shouldn't be a European Union member. So I would like to ask you, how credible is the European Union in Serbia? And does anybody really care if we from Brussels try to put pressure on Serbia to fight corruption and to respect workers' rights?
I believe that you should do that. I mean, we are not strong enough inside the country, but I still believe. I don't believe that devastating 33%. You mentioned 33% of people who are for joining Serbia to EU. But the play we talked about a few minutes ago, that is the result. I mean, we have strong message, and every time when you came to Serbia, you brought. We talked about carrot and the stick is always bigger than the carrot. And not people in Serbia, but in all Western Balkans, they do not accept that approach easily. I think that is the matter of mentality. And what I'm sorry, you asked something more.
Just if no, actually, you answered the question.
I answered. Okay, thank you. And I think that you have one. You had a question, I believe.
Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank
of
you.
course, I'm also a member of the board of the Southeast Europe Association, and currently also working in Serbia. So I'm very familiar, of course, with the case, and I think it sheds an important light on something. Maybe we should actually really look at a number of parameters, and Manuel mentioned them as well. If we look that this is obviously not only the result of criminal energy on who is ever a part. I mean, Chinese investors, Serbian facilitators, I don't know what country kind of traffickers, complicit airline companies, etc. It is also the result of opportunities that were created. Because why would you go and actually employ Vietnamese people in Serbia while many people leaving Serbia to seek employment elsewhere in the European Union? Why would you place a rather dangerous and also, of course, polluting industry in a country with a weak rule of law? And who is actually profiting from this? You described it a bit in terms of the investment streams. And I think this really is, of course, extremely worrying because it happens in a country that is a candidate to the European Union, one of the most advanced, knowledge-based, service-oriented, high-standard kind of economies. So there is something that has to be revisited because, as you said yourself, this is probably not the only case. And at the same time, we are actually looking at rule of law mechanisms, having stringent reporting, conditionality, etc. But we also have quite worrying reports that reports may not necessarily reflect exactly what is happening in countries with regard to what comes out of the institutions in Brussels, etc. So there's something fundamentally which I think you pointed to with this story, which has to be looked at. And that brings me to the question, and it's actually probably a nice question to somehow conclude this part of the discussion, is where is the strength? Because you are a strong person. You have a strong story, not only found a very important story, but you also have the strength to go through it. And how can we really strengthen the strengths in the system of those people who want to transform this, regardless of the European Union process, etc.? Where are, I don't know, are there prosecutors who we can strengthen? Are there police officers? What else needs to be strengthened to fight this kind of crime? And of course, to create better jobs, healthy jobs, and of course also work for drinking water in Zrenjanin.
Yes. For me, that is the most important question. I was thinking about that as well often, but my conclusion is that we have to find new people. It is not just an empty story. I really believe that, and I was working with some kids who wants to be journalists, and that is that purity and energy I see we have to flourish. So we have to find those young persons. We need support in the area of the infrastructure. I mean in physical infrastructure and in the area of social infrastructure, and create a new network. This is not good, and it will fall. It is falling down. It is the matter of time when all the system will collapse. But we do not have new breaks to build new system. We need we have to start to build a new system. And thank you for that question, because for me that is some optimistic way to finish. this part of this discussion.
I think we have questions left, actually, and please.
Yeah, my name is Helge Hogsdorf. I'm also a member of the board of the Southeastern Association. I'm also a fan of soccer, and so we are about to join the World Championship in soccer in Qatar, and everybody is aware that similar stories as you discovered have happened over there. What do you expect from governments, from the EU or other governments in this world with regard to this violence and not obeying labor rights in Qatar with regard to this championship of soccer?
I don't know anything about this soccer. I'm sorry. But maybe we can make a parallel with my experience regarding water and Ling Long and other issues I was working on. And I can say that the common for all those teams is that solution is in the pressure which comes from outside. Inside it is not possible. I don't know, am I clear enough?
Yes, thank you. Maybe to shift a bit back to the optimistic note that Tobias already mentioned, we talked about the difficult situation and the difficult circumstances of your work, but after all, you managed to publish such a story and to do this research. And maybe you can tell us a bit, how did your colleagues and you accomplish that, and what are the conditions beyond your personal case that you could say, okay, this is a strategy that journalists in Serbia and maybe also in the region apply or can apply to be successful and to still manage to do their job despite of the difficult circumstances?
My experience is stay on the ground, believe in yourself, and find at least one colleague and one great editor, and you will have a good ground to grow. That is my case. And maybe if we have just a few examples like that we can start, but we can build a network, but step by step. We have to do it step by step. Now it is not possible to do it immediately.
My name is Markus Kaiser from the Naumann Foundation, and in some European societies, mass media are not that powerful anymore, regardless if they are close to government or non-governmental, because of social media. Social media sort of created their own sphere of amplifying news. So sometimes through social media, stories that the big media suppress still get a lot of attention because social media then distributes them. And I was wondering how did Serbian people react to your story? Was it a big thing in Serbia, although mass media didn't really wanted to cover it? And what do you think? Do social media amplify all this crazy stuff that media close to government put out, or is there room for investigative journalism to become bigger in Serbia through mass media, through social media in the future?
Until today, I was on ignore by government. We will see what will happen tomorrow. But in our story, we have two really polarized situation. It is white and it is black. There is no gray zone. We have people who use social networks to organize themselves and bring the food to those people. But we have, on another hand, we had a group of people who use social networks to send the message that we have to send home all those Chinese to Japan, you know. So today everyone can be a journalist, and that is the weakness of social networks. But I believe that social networks will never change or be a replacement for traditional media. Yes, that we can use it, and they have their good sides. But for me, they are just one part of the picture, but not the crucial one. Very important, but not the crucial one.
I have to push the button. Okay, congratulations for the award. And I'm also a journalist. I'm working for Deutsche Welle, and I'm also a member of the Southeast European Association, board member. So one of your last quotes provoked me a bit when you were answering the question of Christian, that the way you worked was just find the story, work on it, and then hopefully somebody will pick it up, and then you will have a network of cooperation. I think it's very important, and especially in the case of investigation, to cooperate from the very first moment. And I think this also gives a lot of strength to the individual and the ground. And especially in Serbia, we see a lot of investigative networks cooperating with big players like Deutsche Welle or others. So this was more a statement, and my question goes a bit beyond, because out of this experience, what story are you working on now, and what would you change in your future investigation?
Scope of my work is Ling Long, and you expected that answer, because nobody works on that anymore. That is what I said. All cameras switched off. All journalists left searching for another great big stories, and maybe part of answer to your question and the Chris question is that are the journalists in small environments, small municipalities, searching for the human stories. My theory, and that's what I am working on, that is that we all have work on human stories, because they are life. I listen about big investigative networks every day, but real life and the new normality we were faced with in past 2 or 3 years bring something new, and we forgot about the real life and the life of ordinary people. So I will try to find another interesting story, and I will ask Mr. Juratovic for help, because I don't know the word, and he will help me. Talking about nice people and nice stories, I had an interview with one of my colleagues from the radio. We worked together 20 years ago, and now he on crta stripove.
Yes, die Zeichenheftle. Ja.
Mikro.
Comics.
Yes, he makes comics, but he is one of the best in the world. And we were sitting in the center of Zrenjanin, and I asked him similar questions. I asked really similar to all of questions you asked me today. And he told me, solution is in finding svitac. That's small insects who produce lights.
Glühwürmchen. Glühwürmchen.
Do you understand? And he said, our duty is to find that. And if we all produce small light, there will be light.
I would say one last question, and I mean we're not a mass event, and we will have some food and drinks. So if you have more questions, you can directly ask it. And I would say last one, Katja.
Thanks. My name is Katja Giebel, also Heinrich Böll Foundation, Berlin. Thanks a lot for your very important work. I'm interested how you generally assess the Serbian perception on Chinese investments, or let's call it credits, and the character of these investments, especially in relation to EU funds. And what could EU do about having a better reputation on the ground? I mean, totally understandable the EU fatigue, but still, maybe there's something left to do.
Mm-hmm. I am against so-called investments, which I believe will not bring anything good. On another hand, I was working on an EU project in Banat, and I know how significant they are. And I know why our government is looking for a room between Germany, France, China, and Russia, because EU will bring new rules, new behavior, and new base for the building a house. So I am still for EU. That is not changed.
Thank you so much.
I missed the part of the question. I was wondering if
So if this question
we
is,
can continue later.
If this question is well enough answered, I would first say you closed with "I still believe." I really much like this because in 1996 there was this football championship. You remember? And usually you have to ask everybody, like, do you remember who was winning? Last time I was in Prague making this joke. They didn't like it. The Germans were winning. But the famous song of the British fans was "We Still Believe." You know, football's coming home. And then some colleague from Western Balkans told me that, yeah, but the phrase before was 30 years of pain. So I like that you say, I still believe, because it's important that also we still believe in the path of the region towards the European Union. Not believing also doesn't help. Like not drinking on the reception following also doesn't help. Yeah. So I want to thank Krsto. I want to thank especially you. I want to thank the colleagues. Actually, this was the whole Presidium of South East Europe Association was in actually making this event with all the questions and contributions worthwhile. For me, it was wonderful to be with you all here and have you here. And yes, outside there will be something else wonderful and the possibility to chat. Before everybody's just losing and running to the buffet, some of us will have to make a photo before getting some food and drinks. This is us mainly, right, Christian? And of course the laureate. You will get the food only after we have a photo with you. The rest can already start. Thank you. See you next time.